Hello everyone and welcome back to Project Ozone Reloaded Titan Mode. This is episode 36 and today I'm going to answer some questions. This is mostly going to be a build episode rather than a quest episode or a show and tell or something of that nature. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and accept rewards for some quests that were completed between episodes. In the Mew chapter, which is where all four of them are, I completed the Gold Singularity, the Quartz Singularity, the Lapis Singularity, and the Redstone Singularity. These each required between 45 and 50,000 blocks of the materials that are named. And the gold one was actually the one that was probably the hardest to do. The rest of them is just converting EMC from various forms, and I have quite a bit of EMC at this point. It's going to start getting a little harder with some of these others, but let's go ahead and claim the rewards and see what sort of exciting things we got. Okay, these are all legendary loot bags. Ultimate bin, not too legendary in my view. Maximum speed bow and arrows, also not legendary. Beacon and auto enchantment table. You know, I don't think any of those were very legendary, but let's toss them all away. I did get this wireless terminal working, as you can see. What I had not done was you can actually go ahead and take it and right click it like I was attempting to do if you've got it set up. I was actually kind of hoping it would show an empty interface so that I could go ahead and stick in the Infinity Booster card and the Magnet card, but it won't show you anything if you haven't completely set it up. So what I needed to do was I needed to plop down the security terminal, and I needed to put in a wireless access point on the AE system, and then you just run this through a slot on the security terminal, and at that point it will give you pretty much what you need. It will go ahead and link up, and if you put the Infinity card in, you'll be able to access your AE system everywhere. Now, as you can see from this large skyscraper big reactor, it's got fuel now. It is not full. It's at let's see, 95.5% full. And that took every last one of my Yellorium ingots that I had on hand at the time, even though this is not really a particularly optimal setup. It's only got 225 fuel rods, and if I was setting this up the way that I normally set them up, it would actually have a lot more than 225 fuel rods. In fact, it would have twice that many, or 450 of them. But be that as it may, it's ridiculously expensive to fuel this thing up, and I suspect that on an ongoing basis it will be very expensive to run. Now, one thing I did was there is actually I'm not going to break the computer so you can see it, but that's the interface that allows you to interact with the reactor through a computer. And I've written a very small program, which I'm just calling set power here. And what this does is it allows me to set the power level on the reactor. And it does this by controlling really all the fuel rods at once. This is not a very complicated program. Your options are 0 to 100 as a percentage of full power, which is the reverse of the way that fuel rods calculate their number, or maximum, max, which is the same thing as 100, or min, and minimum is not the same thing as 0. Basically, minimum sets them all to where the control rods are fully inserted, so the reactor is totally powered down, but then it lifts one rod out by 1%. So that is the slowest you can conceivably run this reactor. I haven't actually tried it. I haven't powered it up at all yet. I'm going to in this episode, because we're going to answer a few questions. And here are the questions that I'm going to answer. First of all, You might be wondering how I can fuel a maximum size big reactor. Well, that's question number one that I'm going to answer. Question number two is, how can I get a million EMC a minute? Now, this may not have occurred to you as a question that you would want to ask, but there is a quest in the quest book, or not a quest in the quest book, an achievement in the simple achievements book that it's under the community section. It basically says produce a million EMC a minute. I don't know what a million EMC a minute really means. I'm going to assume it means produce items equivalent to a million EMC in a single minute using some mechanism through Project E. So that's going to be kind of how I do it. And then the last question, which actually sort of the question tells you how I'm going to do it, is how can I get 160,000 nether stars for the transmutation table recipe? Because that's how many it takes. And the answer is, of course, by getting far more than a million EMC per minute. I'm actually probably already producing a million EMC a minute, because if we go and look at how many nether stars I've got in here, I've got 47,000 nether stars, and I've actually junked a bunch of them. I used up a bunch of them making all those gold blocks for the gold singularity. And if you go and figure out how many minutes there are in a day, it's like 1,440. And I have not been running so many days that that I would actually have accumulated 47,000 nether stars at the rate that would be a million EMC a minute. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to automatically generate nether stars, and I'm going to call them EMC, and I'm going to use that EMC to fuel this reactor, and there will be surplus to use for other purposes as well. And I do not have any connectivity to my AE system in this environment other than just what I can do by hand through the terminal. So I'm actually going to be trying to make a fairly self-contained system. And the way I'm going to do it is actually through Phytogenic Insolators, which are a better choice for this purpose than farms, in my opinion. Now, a farm, you can make a very big farm, although for the nether stars, if you do the farming approach, they require a substrate of awakened draconium blocks, and I think that's going to be a little pricey and a little hard to make a massive farm with. But if that's how you want to do it. I'm going to use Phytogenic Insulators. And for anyone not familiar with the Phytogenic Insulator, let me just go ahead and get one out of the AE system. I've actually got 13 of them here. I'll just go ahead and pull all 13 of them. And I'll just place one down right, I guess I'll put it down right about here. This will do. Okay, so this block is a farming block, and it doesn't really farm in the usual sense. What it does is it takes seeds and fertilizer as input and power. Also, it takes water as input, and it produces seeds and farm product as output. So it's sort of like a farm in a block, but it requires power, so it's sort of an artificial farm in a block. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this block to produce two things. One of them is going to be to produce nether essence from, or rather nether star essence from nether star seeds. The other one is actually going to be, we're going to have to produce the fertilizer for this, and it requires a component that we can't make through EMC, that component being Phytogrow, which is the fertilizer. And so we're going to also have to produce something that's going to make Phytogrow. Now, if we look at Phytogrow, it's actually showing up here. There are two types. There's Phytogrow and Rich Phytogrow. And the difference between these is basically that Rich Phytogrow gives you 3 times the product. However, it requires rich slag rather than regular slag, and rich slag can only be made by smelting ores in an induction furnace. So we are actually going to smelt ores in an induction furnace. So the first thing I'm going to set up here is a build to produce gold ore, actually, because gold ore gives a high yield of rich slag compared to other types of ore. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up, and I will be back when I have that basic piece of it set up. And then I'll talk about that piece, and then we'll apply the information from that piece to going on further and making the Nether Star production. Okay, I had to change my plans a little bit. One of the things I didn't do before I started recording this episode was go and build the whole thing and then break it all down and then reassemble it on camera. I just didn't want to do it that way. And so I had an unfortunate discovery, which is that the Phytogenic Insulator, while it does support the nether seeds, and we're going to be able to get this to work, it does not support all of the other magical crops or seeds, which means that I'm not going to be able to use gold ore or iron ore or whatever manufactured from essence produced in a Phytogenic Insulator to produce rich phytogrow. So I got a couple options there. One is that I can set up a conventional farm to farm gold essence, and that way I can still get rich phytogrow. But I really don't want to do that up here. I don't have a lot of space. I don't have an area set aside for it. The other alternative is to go ahead and produce the non-rich phytogrow, just regular phytogrow. It takes regular slag in order to produce its product, and that actually will be okay. It'll be about a third as productive, meaning I'll have to have 3 times as many phytogenic insulators in order to produce the same amount of product, but this will still produce a lot of product, and it will still scale up very nicely if I need to. And then I can switch to rich phytogrow at some point if I have a lot of it available at some point. That is what I'm using in the overworld and the machine I've set up there, but of course there I have a lot of ore processing going on that just produces it as a side effect, so that's not really a problem. Okay, so here making a self-contained system, here's how we're getting our slag. This is a very simple way to produce slag. I think I've used it in every series I've done here on YouTube now, which is basically to set up a pulverizer next to an induction smelter. And you just circulate the same set of ingots. Like here's a half a stack of iron ingots in here, and you just circulate it. It gets pulverized into pulverized iron. It gets sent to the induction smelter. The induction smelter will be using sand as well as the pulverized material that it gets back, and then it will just send the iron ingots straight back over to the pulverizer, and they will cycle through there over and over again. And the upshot of this process, sort of the summary, is to go and convert sand into slag. That's essentially what it does. So the rest of the process here is going to be to use a cyclic assembler to produce phytogrow. And I've already got the schematic set up here for it. It's not going to let me see the schematic, but it's 1 pulverized charcoal, 1 slag, and 1 niter. Pulverized charcoal and niter have EMC values and can be produced in an energy condenser Mark II like I'm doing here. So that's not an issue. They'll just be pulled out of there using this retriever and stuck on the bottom row here. The slag will go in on the top row. Doing it this way will avoid the problem where the machine gets stopped up with one component and can't produce any more product. The top here will be producing sand, and all of these will be using EMC that's coming from the process of producing the nether stars. I will take some of the nether stars and break them down into copper ingots, and these are all configured to take copper ingots as their input, and they will use the EMC from the copper ingots to make the components that I need to run the slag process to generate more phytogrow. So the next step is to go ahead and set up the phytogenic insulators to produce the nether star essence. So let me just take and set up a bunch of these. And I was going to set up 12 before. I'm still going to set up 12 because 12 will still be enough. At least I'm pretty sure it will. But I think I'm going to want more infinite water than just one of those. Let's go ahead and get 12 infinite water. Okay. So I'm just going to move down a little bit further down, and I'm going to leave a little space in the middle. And we'll just start putting these things down. And if you haven't figured out yet, I do like to take advantage of having vertical space available. It seems a little silly to me that we play this game that takes place in a 3D world, and often we just create a big flat platform and never do anything beyond that, never building higher up than we can reach. And when we can fly, that's kind of silly. Anyway, what I want to do is I want to configure these, and there's a little bit of an issue sometimes with these machines. They have a lot of inputs and outputs. Basically, you have 4 inputs once you consider water and power, and you have 2 outputs. And of course, that's 6 sides of a cube. But of course, you can always put power in on any side. You can also, on these machines, they differ a little from most other thermal expansion machines in that you can put water in on any side. So what I'm going to do to get it started is I'm just going to go ahead and stack these infinite water blocks up on the side. And I have deliberately laid these out so that I can give every machine exactly the same configuration. There's no mirroring, in other words. Okay, so we've got that, and they're all filling up with water. These function as a tank, so these infinite water blocks can fill them directly. You don't have to fill a tank and then pump the water up. So let me just take the bottom one here, and what I'm going to tell it is I'm going to tell it that I want the outputs to come out on the right side, all of them. That's going to be orange and like that. And then I'm going to have the inputs come in on the back. And I'm going to hit this lock fertilizer slot so that fertilizer can only go in on this side. This is going to solve the problem with having to use 2 sides to keep these inputs separate. So we'll just have fertilizer forced into this side, and then seeds will go on the other side. And then on the outputs, we'll just have to use filters to sort of segregate it. Now, in order to transfer these settings to all the other machines, I'm going to use a red print. And you can, let me just erase this one. Okay, so it doesn't have anything now. Use on a device to copy its settings. So now it's got the settings of that Phytogenic Insulator, and I can just take and use it on these other devices to copy all the settings to all the other 11 machines very quickly. And you'll notice that they all have an orange on the side and a, well, I missed one of them. Let's put that there. Okay, and now it has blue on the back as well. So they're all orange on the side and blue on the back. That's a lot quicker than going and doing all that clicking through on every one of these machines. It even caught the locked fertilizer slot and so on. So I'll put that away, and we're ready to start hooking these machines up. So I'll just conduit them all up and down the side here. And since these are the output side, it's fine that these are pointing out. Alright, and then over here on the back, I'll go ahead and hook up all the inputs. And on these, my red print won't work. but these do need to be set to insert, so I'll just set each one of them to insert. And I'm going to have to put a filter on each one of these to tell it that it's accepting nether seeds or nether star seeds, and it's accepting Phytogrow. And when I have all that set up, I'll be right back. Okay, in that break I did a little bit more than just installing filters. They are filtered now. All of the machines now take nether star seeds and Phytogrow as input on the back. And of course they output on the right. And what's going on now is when the output comes through, in general, it will get input straight back into the machines because nether star seeds are one of the inputs and they're at priority 0. Now what I have done over here though is I've set up a compactor, and this compactor is set up to recursive compacting. We don't need to try 2x2 recipes at all, and it's always on. And this one will take both nether star seeds and nether star essence in the filter on the back, but it's at priority -1. So because it's at lower priority, seeds will go into phytogenic insulators before they come here. Basically, a block of nether star seeds gives you an essence. So if you have surplus seeds, and inevitably this will produce tons of surplus seeds, then you can simply push it straight back into here and convert it into essence so that you increase your total productivity. Now the nether stars that are produced in here, and I guess I should make sure there's no nether star block. I don't think there is. If we come over here and look at nether stars, there's this thing that hardly qualifies as a block, but I don't really see anything. Lots of expensive items in this mod pack. Yeah, I don't see any evidence of a nether star block. And the nether stars are being retrieved using these retrievers. Now, I have not tried this setup. This may have some issues and I have to go back and address it a little better, but what I'm trying to do is I'm hoping that it will sort of retrieve them evenly if possible. The one on the bottom is trying to keep one nether star stocked in this machine, which produces copper ingots. Then I also want one nether star stocked in the top one, which is producing yellorium ingots, and potentially infinite in the middle, which is producing growth pulsars. And growth pulsars, of course, are, well, not of course, but they happen to be an item that's very close to 1,000,000 EMC. It's 1,049,678 EMC. So they're a good metric for seeing, are we producing 1,000,000 EMC a minute, at least. If you wait a minute and you don't have any, then maybe not, although some of your products are inevitably going to these other sources. So the other thing I did through here was I strung power to all of the machines and then over to one of the ports on the gigantic reactor. So I think that I am pretty much ready to turn on the reactor and see if everything is working. I am going to go ahead and toss some copper ingots in here, and that should be round robining them out. Let me make sure that I set that up to round robin. I didn't, but it should at this point have still had enough to get some of all of these materials. It didn't. Niter is actually fairly expensive. Let me get all this niter out of here and put it back in here, and we'll redistribute the copper ingots so that we have some of all of the necessary materials here. Okay, it looks like we're doing okay there, and we do have sand in the induction smelter now. Pulverizer had iron pre-stocked. The cyclic assembler does not have any of these materials coming out of it, and I'm not sure why. Oh, I bet maybe I have to just set that to ignore. And it's still not retrieving any. Let me take a quick break and see if I can figure out why not. Okay, it's working. The only issue was that the default on the retriever is to blacklist. I'm a little bit used to the Ender IO conduits, and on them the default is a whitelist. So it's working now. That's not a problem. So coming back over here, let's just go ahead and set these other retrievers in that same way. They do need to be set to ignore and whitelist. Ignore and whitelist, ignore and whitelist. Although at the moment they don't have anything whitelisted to retrieve, it's going to be nether stars. In fact, why don't I just go ahead and set that up, because I do have plenty of nether stars. I'm not going to keep this one here because I want to actually see the production, but I can set the filters up. Okay, so it's set up for nether stars now. So I just need to turn on the power, I guess, and see what happens. Now this should be set to a very, very low power setting. Hopefully I don't crash when I activate it. Sometimes big reactors, in my experience, can crash when you fire up a reactor. So we're producing... We've already completely filled the buffer. Yeah, it's actually probably running more than my expectation. I don't think that it should be producing quite this much power. I'll have to investigate that and see what's going on. But coming back over here, we should be... We're circulating iron ingots, so that is working. And it should be producing slag as a side effect. I don't know that we're going to see this. Okay, it just popped in and some Phytogrow was produced and pumped out. Phytogrow is coming over here. I don't see my seeds. I wonder where they went. I guess they could have gone to any of these machines. They were in one of the machines to begin with. Let me just start with a whole stack of seeds if I have them. I'm pretty sure I do. Oh yeah, got over 4,000 of them. And let's just put them all in this machine and see what happens. So we've got 2 machines running now, and it should eventually fire up a third one. We are producing nether stars right through here. Looks like we might have produced some copper there. It's a little hard to say. We've definitely produced some yellorium here. So one of the things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go ahead and hook up the fuel here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the yellorium input over here and the cyanite output. Normally you would run this through a reprocessor, and I've still got to do the quest to make the reprocessor, but I'm not going to use it here because I think it will be just as effective to go ahead and send it straight over into one of these energy condensers. I don't know which one necessarily, but I can send it into one of these energy condensers and convert it that way. That will actually save a lot of energy and water and so on trying to reprocess the fuel. In fact, it takes 2 cyanide to produce 1 plutonium, and the plutonium counts as 1 fuel unit just like a yellorium bar, and you can actually take through EMC and convert 2 cyanide into 1 yellorium bar. So there's no real advantage to doing it the other way. So this has run out of Phytogrow at this point. Probably because it's going to take a little while to tweak this to get it running optimally. Because we just don't have copper bars at the moment. I'm not sure why this one hasn't accepted any yet. That's kind of interesting. It may just be that it works as lowest priority, which is what I need it to do, but I haven't seen anything that would say for sure that that's what was going on. So we've got enough seeds going that we're doing it. Let me go ahead and cut the video here, and when I get back, we will see that all of these machines are fired up, and hopefully we're producing at least 1 million EMC a minute, in excess of what it takes to fuel the reactor. Okay, everything is running full steam now. It actually did not take nearly as long as I expected. I really did not have enough time to do what I wanted. It's been going for a little while like that, and all I wanted to do was actually run a conduit over here and pull the waste out of the reactor and toss it back over here for recycling. And I didn't have enough time to do that before it was actually all the machines were running and it was producing these things. So just looking at this, we're at 19 right now, and it looks like we're at 20 now, and I don't think that was a whole minute that elapsed. So looks like we're at 21 now, so we're definitely producing more than 1 million EMC per minute. So I can check that off in the book, and I can check off the huge reactor filled with gelid cryothium and diamonds off in the book, and then I guess I can start moving on to bigger and better things. I'm going to have to actually ship these growth pulsars back to the overworld. Probably I'll just use a tesseract for now, but I may eventually put in an AE system over here and bridge them so that it can communicate directly. I don't know that I need to. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to do here is probably just going to be produce it here and output it, and for a one-way connection, a tesseract works wonderfully. So I guess maybe there's just a little time. It's a little hard for me to say how much time has passed here because I had some long intervals in it, and I can't just look and see how long the video is. But let me come over and we'll go back to the overworld, and then I want to get, there are a couple of small quests I want to get out of the way so that I'll have certain things for moving forward. So I will see you there. Okay, let's just check off those items in the achievement stand here while I'm here. Build a completely filled max-size reactor with gelid cryothium and diamond blocks. Done. And let's see. That reactor is actually running at 1% of what's needed for this 10 billion RF per tick, I believe. That would be, no, I guess maybe it's not running at that much. It's running quite a bit faster than I would like, really. I can't use that much power. Let's see here. Quite a few stuff. All that growth pulsar production will definitely help with this one. Use growth pulsars to speed up magical crops growth in a 15 by 15 field. I don't know if growth pulsars work with agricraft or if I'll have to have pure magical crops to do that. I know that I want to do Minicio for that, but I'm not sure. There's a reason for doing Minicio with it. I'm just not sure if I can use the agricraft or if I need to use the regular crops to do it. Okay, 94 on TTV. Produce 1 million EMC per minute. Definitely done. So we'll check that one off. And let's go and look at the other quests that I want to get done today. I don't need all this avaricious stuff, except for some of these higher end ones will be done. All of these that are singularities will get done off camera. Lambda is Draconic Evolution, not that. Not Project D. big reactors and Galacticraft. Let's come back to big reactors in a minute. RF tools, Erebus, and Ether. Applied Energistics. Solar Flux, Quantum Flux, and MFR. Pneumaticraft and Mechanism. This is where I'm wanting to go. And the one I'm wanting to do, I really need to do the circuit breaker at some point, but I'm not going to just yet. Let's look at Robot Miner, which is actually the digital miner. This is actually kind of a nice mining block. It has a lot of different features for filters and stuff on the blocks that you get. It's hard to say that I would prefer it. If I could only have one machine available for mining, I probably would not prefer this one over the Ender Quarry. But there are definitely situations where this one is a very nice choice. So let's see what we need to have for the digital miner, and I'm going to come over here and open this up to do that. So this is actually a very complicated and difficult recipe in this mod pack. I'm going to need 2 teleportation cores, and those are atomic alloy. So this is a fairly basic thing. Let's see if I've got what I need for it. I do. So let me make a recipe template for that and get a couple of them so that I will have them for crafting, and I'll just put the pattern in there. So coming back over here, I'm going to need 2 logistical sorters, and those are reasonably straightforward. These are actually for mechanisms, pipes. If you haven't used mechanism, and I've used it very little, then this is, you could think of this as being maybe just a little bit like a wooden pipe, because this is the interface between a machine and the pipe network, but it does a lot more. So I'm missing the top item on this one, which was, if we come back in here, a piston. Well, that is not a problem. We'll just make a couple of pistons, or 3. I'll put that in there. I'll just go ahead and make a couple of these if I can. There we go. Okay, returning to the miner. I need this Tesseract. I know is configured in the system. Quantum Entangloporter is not, I don't think. Dimensional Transceiver might be. No, it's made in the QED. I really don't like the QED recipes in this mod pack at all. I will say that, because you have to do them by hand. As far as I know, there's no other way to get out of it. But let's go back to the other pieces. The Quantum Entangloporter, I think I can probably set up that recipe. Not yet, I can't. You know, there's another quest I need to do for this one. I think that's the component I need. The refined obsidian here. It wants me to make 1 refined obsidian ingot in the osmium compressor. I think I've got an osmium compressor set up here. Let's just do that. It makes such wonderful noise. It sounds like a hog farm. Okay, so we do have that one now. Greater reward bag. Cobblestone framework. Let's put that in there and see if I can... Yes, so the last piece that we're missing on that is the ultimate control circuit. And I can definitely make some of those. Okay, so I've got a pattern for it. Let me put it in here. This is actually another item that was a quest. I thought I had made one before. Maybe I haven't. Let's take a look. No, I have not. I have not finished this quest. So let's go ahead and make one of those. I'll just pull it out of there. Well, I can't because I don't have enough refined obsidian ingots in the system, but I'll toss those in there and I will be able to. So pull one of those out and we can claim a reward on here. I'm doing more quests than I planned on here, I will say that. Engineer's Workbench, Revolver Drum, Extended Magazine. These are from that Modular Turrets mod, aren't they? No, Immersive Engineering. Okay. Obsidian. I'm going to need to make a bunch more of this stuff, so let me just go ahead and tell it to make some. Okay, returning to the digital miner again. I've got that component. Do I have that component? I do have that component already in the system, so I don't need to make one that way. Tesseract. I don't have a Tesseract in the system. Actually, I do. I wonder why it doesn't. The one that I've got might be configured a little differently. Let's, really? I'm missing a Tesseract frame full? I could swear that I have that set up. Let me get some of these set up and get it a little closer to actually finishing this item. I can tell that I'm going to run out of time here. Okay, I'm back, and what I found when I went downstairs and looked was I actually do have all the recipes for the Tesseract and that stuff set up, just like I thought I did. However, I installed some stuff down there, and unbeknownst to me, I ran out of channels, and those machines are sort of the machine furthest down the cable, if you will. And so they kind of lost their connectivity, and I went and broke a couple of cables to give them the connectivity they needed, and I'll have to go down there and figure out what I need to do with all of that stuff. Be that as it may, the last component for the center of this digital miner is this thing called a robot. I actually have no idea what a robot does outside of being a component of this machine, but I bet it does do something. It certainly looks kind of interesting. Let's pull that out of there, and I will put that in here, and then we can finish the digital miner. Now, one of the things, I'm not going to set this up as a template recipe because one of the things that happens, some of these components can store power, and I've got the wireless charger running, and so anytime anything shows up in your inventory, however briefly, it becomes useless for setting up a recipe template. I will have to go and remove that and set this thing up some other way if I want to do it that way. I don't know if I really want to set up a recipe for this whole thing anyway, but let me just pull it out of here. If I can. Apparently I can't. What am I missing? I only have one logistical sorter. Maybe if I tell it to make another one, that will be the component that I'm missing, and I can pull it out. There we go. So, pulling this one out finally. Claim a reward bag. It's an epic reward bag, and it gives epic ME cabling, which would actually have been very nice somewhat earlier in the game, but I don't have a pressing need for it right now. So this is actually a huge machine. I don't think I want to plop it down in the base because it's going to have a little bit of a charge from having been here, and I don't want it to maybe start digging or something accidentally. But I will demonstrate the use of that machine in the setting where I really want to use it. There's a simple achievements thing for using it in the deep dark, but the deep dark is not really where I want to use that machine. I will get the achievement by running it in the deep dark, but I'm not going to prefer to use that to mine in the deep dark. Anyway, I hope this was a helpful episode for you in some ways. Got to see how to make a lot of EMC, got to see how to fuel a gigantic reactor indefinitely. Got to see how to make lots of nether stars if you need to in order to make the necessary stuff that nether stars are required for. You need 160,000 of them from the transmutation table. However, I think that is going to go ahead and conclude the episode. So I do want to go ahead and ask you that if you found it useful, that you go ahead and consider subscribing or liking or commenting or sharing. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next episode.